Thank you. Good morning, members, officers and viewers. Particular welcome to Councillor Mark Howell's Chair of Place, coming along this morning to answer some questions if necessary. The Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act. Council's normal standing orders will also apply. The recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded to the public as soon as possible, and a Welsh translation is available should anybody want it. Apologies, please, Samantha.
We've got apologies from Councillor Jenkins, Councillor Reynolds and Councillor James, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest other than your own repairs? No? Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting then, please. Could somebody let us know if they think it's a reasonable record of minutes? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Are there any matters arising then, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have a number actually. One, I thought we'd actually been told, but apparently we haven't. This is about the recommendation, request an update on lace, lice using bilingual literature.
Yes, well, like any Welsh companies, they are bilingual, and any other documents are available both bilingually. So, is there any other questions for Clive?
I don't think so.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the other one was about the written response that you released about some recommendations we made about the community parenting strategy. From memory, we made recommendations and they went to cabinet, but it was about a month later. And those recommendations were in the report. So I'm just wondering what are the recommendations.
I apologise, Councillor Evans. I haven't done anything with that. I'm going to do that now, and I'll write it back to the committee within a week.
Lovely.
Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
So I apologise for that.
No, it's just, I think it's just important that we try and make recommendations in it. And on the empty home strategy, Chair, just a couple of questions. We recommended a more ambitious target for the reduction of empty homes, whether that's been taken forward or not. That'd be useful to find out.
Certainly, I understand the recommendation has been taken forward. It will be for us to have a look at next year because a further RSL meeting has been arranged for prior to the council elections next year.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, Chair. We're doing draft forward work programming at the minute, and that's been penciled in. It does say in the table that that recommendation has been accepted, and they will be reviewed for 26-27, so we shouldn't see the target change.
I was hoping we were going to get some more information. We also request information about comparable local authority targets. I was hoping we were going to get more information about that rather than waiting a year from our previous one. Perhaps we could ask the head of housing to give us a look.
From memory, Councillor Evans, when we talked about this, obviously we can't mandate the RSLs to give us this information, but we did talk about the possibility of getting information from the Welsh Government as to where they've actually allocated the grants. So I don't know whether that's with Mr. Coleman to have a look at that.
So my understanding, going back to the best practice point that Councillor Evans raised, that's outstanding, and so is the comparable targets. That's outstanding, but I have raised that and escalated it. The RSL information, which is number 8 in our actions monitoring table, that's been completed, and a response was sent out to members last week. So yeah, there are 2 outstanding, but that one, that RSL money is being completed.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else on the minutes? No? Okay, thank you. Mr. Rushworth, how do you propose to move forward with this report now? Are you going to give an overview to start with?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we've got a presentation
which sets out some of the key issues that's in the draft budget. We've taken a very similar one to the two service area scrutinies already, and they've had a look at the detail of the proposals in there, as very quiet as they are this year. So we'll take you through for that, and then obviously you've got the chairs here, and we'll take questions. Obviously, your committee is more concerned about the overarching issues as opposed to the detailed proposals in the service areas. They've been looked at by the other scrutinies, but happy to take questions as you've got. So if that's okay, we'll have a presentation.
And as in previous years, you can make comment if you want to, but we can't send these proposals back because the budget timetable says that it has to go to cabinet next week.
For their February meeting, yeah, we should do that. Okay, so the presentation then. Obviously, Cabinet's approved the draft budget, 12th of January. Consultation has been happening. That ends on the 30th, at the end of this week. Welsh Government last week announced their final budget, and there's been a major change there, which I'll talk about. Then obviously Cabinet will be coming forward with their final budget proposals on the 11th of February, and then that will go through to Council on the 24th. So this meeting and all the other internal meetings, the scrutiny, it forms part of the consultation process. The minutes of this meeting will be appended to the Cabinet report for February. So in terms of a summary of where the budget is at, that table there shows you the inflation, the budget pressures, the savings in each of the service areas that we've developed with the Cabinet in the draft budget. Some notes on there. Inflation is a reasonably high figure. We'll go through those assumptions with you on the next slide. But you'll see adult services there is a very high inflation, and that is because of the increase in the real living wage. So in partnership with the Welsh Government, we commit to ask or to insist that care workers in that area earn at least that real living wage, and that's why you see that high inflation figure there. Next one, please. So in terms of where we are in terms of the funding, well, Newport had the highest increase in its RSG of all of the Welsh councils, 20.88 million, of which 4.3 just replaced the specific grants. So new money was 16.5 million. Still the highest increase across Wales, and that's because of the demographics that drives the distribution of that overall pot of money for local councils. Just to bring you up to date, Welsh Government did their final budget last week, and a further 112 million was allocated to local government, of which this council will be getting a little bit over 6 million additional funds coming our way. So therefore the Cabinet will be considering how best to allocate that in their final budget. 6.3 million from council tax, and that comes from three things. One is the council tax base, which is about the equivalent properties that continues to increase as the city grows. We've also increased the collection rate this year. We did reduce it after the COVID period, but our collection rates have been maintained reasonably well. So we've increased it back up to where it's been historically. Then obviously the 4.9% increase in council tax, which is the increase in the draft budget. £4 million in savings. No impact on services. So actually we've not had to consult on any specific savings. Those savings are mainly in the non-service and cross-cutting areas.
by that I mean we had some energy savings that we were gathering and parked them in the non-service areas. They've been released as savings into the budget. And secondly, we've got an up to 3% decrease in the council's employers' pension contribution following the triennial valuation. The draft budget includes just over 2% to produce a balanced draft budget. There's the potential to go up to 3 there as well. The draft budget includes just over 2%. So if the full 3% was sort of taken, that would be another sort of 950 or so thousand pounds. Inflation, as I've said, I think that the commission care costs is where the big one is because of the real living wage, but essentially pay assumptions are 3% next year, 2.5% afterwards. That's based on interest rate on inflation predictions, which is, whilst there's been a blip in the last month or two, the forecasts does assume that inflation will go down towards the 2% over this next 12 months. It may not quite reach 2%, but it'll be hovering in that kind of 2 to 3% above it over the next 12 months or so. And our contract costs, where contracts require an increase because they're stipulated, then we've allowed for that in those as well. We've got a reasonably, embedded, well thought through inflation model that we've been using for many years now. So we've carried on with that. Next slide. So important to differentiate here between funded and unfunded pressure. So the council is facing a lot of budget challenges as demand for services increase. We've also got a number of budget gaps, stemming from historical issues. So we've had an approach this year where services have been asked to mitigate as far as they can those budget pressures. Because inevitably, as soon as you have a budget pressure in the budget, all that does, it requires you to find a saving somewhere. So we've had an approach where we've asked services to mitigate those as far as possible. Now, clearly, not everything was possible, and we are funding just over £5.5 million worth of new budget pressures in the MTFP, which is afforded from that RSG increase and council tax increase. And there's a balance then on the next slide, I think. Okay, schools first, sorry. Within that, schools, we obviously took the Scrutiny Committee through this in detail. Total increase in funding, £8.5 million. All of the schools' pressures are being funded in the draft budget. Inflation, new schools, growing schools, etc. On top of that, the draft budget also invests in additional learning needs provision, which are 2 new secondary LRBs and some funding into the central education budget as well that funds other provision for ALN students. So the new budget approach, we asked services to, wherever possible, to mitigate their own budget pressures. As I said to you, we are funding just over £5.5 million because that was not possible. But as you'll see on the next slide, we have actually asked services are responding to just over £4 million worth of budget pressures that needs to be mitigated for or soon after the 1st of April. You can see adults and children's services are the 2 largest figures in there. So those are not funded in their budgets next year, and they are delivering a series of actions to reduce those budget pressures to live within their budget provision, which will not include investments in those areas. So that's a fairly new approach this year. It's the beginning, it's the first year that we've done it. It's a bit of a journey. It's going to take a little while for all services to get into this continuous loop of managing budget issues. As I said, it will be possible, in its totality, but we've started on that road. So there's an inherent risk there, of course, that if those aren't delivered or can't be delivered, it will give rise to an in-year financial problem. So, in terms of budget savings, just over £4 million, and as I said to you, the vast majority is in that pensions and the non-CERS area. So the two scrutiny committees before you, they didn't get their teeth stuck into those budget savings as they usually do, because there was nothing to actually discuss, and that was noted in those committees as well. Well, the last one, that was a consultation, which I know will be an issue, an area which you want to discuss. Began on the 13th, and it ends at the end of this week, and we're doing all the usual methods of doing that, board meetings, etc., schools forum, and Tracy can provide you with a bit more information there. I think that's it, yeah. So we will be reporting this committee meeting's minutes to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much. If I might, before I ask the members to ask questions, you talked about inflation coming down towards 2%, whether that's CPI or RPI. Have you a figure for local government inflation, which always tends to be considerably higher?
Well, we've used, we will be using specific indicators where they are required. So, for example, care workers will always be matched up to the real living wage increases. It does tend to be higher, or it has been higher than CPI. So that will be bespoke to us. Where contracts have got specific inflationary indicators, we are aware of those. We will have to comply with those. Where we've used the more general CPI inflation figures is on staff pay and all the other contracts that haven't got any specific indicators there. So we do it in a reasonable amount of detail. It's not just a general CPI thing.
I don't doubt the detail that you put into them, but I think it would help the committee and other members if we had a figure that we could sort of get our heads around. But if inflation coming down was 2%, local government inflation will probably be 3%, maybe even 4%.
Well, it's probably something that we can do when we've done the budget, when we've done our inflation modelling, and we've used the various indicators for inflation. We can probably quote you then this council's inflation rates, but it will be a combination of all those individual factors.
Okay, thank you. Slightly got off piece. Councillor Howells has very kindly attended discussion on our house. Have we got any questions for him, or can we release him?
Well, I would hate to release him without asking him something. Councillor, you do make a recommendation, I think, for your committee about, we just mentioned we're going to get an additional £6 million. I think you made comments about that we should give residents the opportunity to comment on how additional government funding should be utilised. Obviously, I think it's probably a question for consultation, but would you like to elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Matthew. I think what I and some of the other committee noted was that prior to the budget being set by Cabinet in January, early January, officers would have been on notice that this £6 million would have been additional money likely to come in. The sort of applied labour agreement was sort of widely published on the 9th of December, and I felt in particular, which I think the committee supported by the recommendation, was that there was a missed opportunity in how we might talk to the public about the priorities for spending that money. And I know that Rhys responded at the committee to say there are general questions in the consultation about sort of other priorities, but I feel like there was a missed opportunity in sort of making proposals for what they might be. I'm sure Cabinet will have already thought about how they might spend that additional money. If they haven't, I'd be a bit concerned, being as it's nearly 2 months down the line. So I would have wanted to see some consultation on those sort of draft proposals, and I appreciate that they were draft and the final settlement only came out a couple of days ago, but it was clear very early on that there was going to be more money, which I think the public should have had an opportunity to talk specifics on. In addition, there's also sort of £900,000 additional money from sort of moving or reducing the pension contributions by 3% instead of 2%, which forms additional money, which again, I'm sure Cabinet have had thoughts about how they might want to spend, and I would have liked to have seen, and the committee would have liked to have seen, an opportunity to talk to the public about priorities for that, which the committee felt had been missed. So there was some sort of talk from Rhys in particular at the meeting about whether there was an opportunity to amend the consultation sort of live, because I think it we weren't sure whether it had just gone out or was just about to go out. So, and I don't know if that's happened yet. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Cornwall.
Yeah. So without replaying the conversation we had in the previous committee, so obviously we had a draft set, and we often find ourselves in this position. I know the quantum is a bit different this year, but we often find that actually the figures we're working on end up not being the final figures. If you look back over the last number of years, actually we end up with the budget tends to be high. And obviously when we're doing the work on what money needs to be spent on, it's always at a point in time. So I suppose a couple of bits with that is, we already know in the budget we're carrying £4.9 million worth of risk because there's service pressures that we've essentially just trying to hold. But also, it was widely publicised that there was additional money going to be coming into the local authority as well. And for reassures the committee, the consultation has primarily focused on, there are a series of questions because there weren't really any budget savings to be made. Is actually asking, these are the questions. What are your top priorities for council spending over the next year? Are there services that should receive more funding, and why? So basically, what we've actually asked the public is, what should we be investing that money in? So I think materially, it hasn't actually made a difference. Yeah, I suppose some lessons learned, Councillor Howells, about next year around actually keeping some of those figures a bit more open when we publicised that consultation in the first place.
Yeah. Are you content with the answer?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
No, obviously, we're not questioning Councillor Howells. No.
I would say it was a perfectly legitimate thing to raise because it is a bit different this year than it has been in previous years. We often, as I said, consult on a figure. It is often very different by the time we get to the final settlement. This year, that quantum has been significantly different, primarily because Welsh Government at one point were holding back quite a lot of cash.
We're content with the process, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome.
No, I'll leave you, ladies and gents, to it. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank Take care.
Thank you. Right, moving on to questions for Mr. Rushworth, please. Councillor Harris, yeah.
Yes, who decides on the level of community charge? Was it not the council tax?
Members, the council does.
Yeah.
So when you go to council at the end of February, you will have the administration's proposals, including the associated council tax increase required for that. That is what you debate and vote on. There will be an opportunity for any individual member or groups usually to put forward alternatives as well. And as long as they've been done properly, then they will also be debated and the council will decide on the budget and the associated council tax rates.
If I might help on that, I think you possibly mean why did we consult on 4.9% rather than 5% or?
Yeah, I did have a 4.9%.
Yeah.
4.9 is what was required to set a balanced budget. I mean, you know, given the quantum of budget savings, budget investments, inflation, etc., Welsh Government's funding is all part of that mix.
I suppose compared to other councils, there's like a league table of
Yeah.
I suppose if you can get slower, then it looks better than you got, doesn't it?
If that is what you seek to achieve, yes, I would never make that a virtue in itself. Personally, I think there are other issues to deal with.
Yeah. That's perhaps a political question.
It is.
I was going to say, cabinet made that recommendation.
It is, yeah, it is.
It's sorry, Chair, just to get it. It's a matter for councillors though, the reasons for setting it.
Yeah. I'm just saying
From
that's
our
the
point of view, we have to set, as my own was saying, it's statutory, Ron, you have to set a balanced budget. Alright, so that is a figure that balances the budget. The assumption that the lower is the better, obviously for people in Newport, they would feel that they're paying less, but you also need to look at the level of students you get as a result of that, and the gap that we have in our funding because of historically low levels of council tax. And there's no coincidence we've got the third lowest level of council tax and the lowest ratio of staff per population in Wales. So, you get what you pay for, I think is the short answer to that.
There are a lot of historical precedents that drive that low number forward.
Yes, I mean, once you are low, all councils are facing the same pressures, and therefore, if you want to change your position, it does require a much bigger change. Yes, yes, it does. Yeah.
Councillor Evans may recall a time when Newport didn't raise the rates at all.
I do indeed, yes, usually before elections.
And?
Usually before elections. But pretty.
No, I was thinking a couple of leaders ago when we had a prolonged period when the rate levels didn't rise.
Yes. Because Harry Jones is here.
That's it, Harry Jones is here.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember.
So it is complex.
It's difficult to then change and catch up. Yes, it is.
I think we did this when we were doing the ward things, but I think the difference between where we are and where we'd be if we were at the world's average is about that difference in budget.
And if you go higher because of the deprivation levels that Newport has, and therefore, you wouldn't be surprised if Newport was higher than the kind of average. If you were on the upper quartile, just on the boundary of the upper quartile, it'd be about 18 million. And without deprivation levels, one might not be surprised about that one. So, but it's a political choice. Yeah. And it's historic history also had a part to play as well. Yeah.
Councillor Harris, are you happy?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Evans.
Just as a general comment about fees and charges, and I've always been one who believes that things should always go up annually on the basis, and otherwise you end up. There's lots of no rises at all on here, and there are others which I'm just flicking on the page here. We've got something here at the Ringland Community Centre, the Doing Disc Glare play group. Charges have gone up 113%. Wraparound care. And there's a whole lot of inconsistencies throughout the report. So photocopy hasn't gone up, well, inflation goes up. I'm just wondering how, as a generalisation, you look at these fees and charges. If something goes up by a massive amount, I'm assuming that might be a grant predicted or something. But I would be very worried why something goes up by a huge amount and other things don't go at all.
So the framework is that income budgets that we control go up by 4% a year, and services are required to plan their fees and charges within that context. So
anyway, you know, you can't expect to get an answer to that question.
It's a general, no, I think we're getting an answer, yeah.
And you know, and therefore if services believe that they can still meet that budget requirements through higher volumes of work, etc., then that will impact on those fees and charges. There's also a project going on as well.
Yes, sorry, Councillor. I suppose to add to that, without going into the detail, I was in half of the people scrutiny committee. I think though there were some questions about some of those fees. So
yeah.
So yeah, we start off with that 4%. I think it's really important to note that some of those fee setting are outside of our control because there's a sort of statutory fee setting process, so we can't move them. Generally, it's 4%. Services then we look at each of those fees, and actually, if it is a rationale and reason for it being different to 4%, that's what they do. And there's individual reasons why some of those things move outside of that 4%. Which you would have to, you have to ask the head of service specifically. I suppose the other bit I was just going to add, Mike just mentioned it. So Bing is leading on a project at the moment, which is around reviewing how we set rewards, fees and charges across organisations. So there will be a different approach.
Yeah, the point I make is if you want an answer to a specific fee or charge.
No, yeah, it's more the generalisation. Funny enough, when we say we things within our control of 4%, we just happen to see that the citizenship charges at the Mansion House, some of those have gone up by 43%. So my question would be, why such a dramatic increase 1 year? A lot of them go up by 4%. So just as a matter of interest, if suddenly something goes up by a huge amount, there must be I would have thought something which has happened.
You know, just the same reason though, there will be things like they haven't gone up for the last 5 or 6 years.
This is my point about why certain things have gone up.
So I suppose, my point is there's an individual story behind each of those. Yeah. So if there were specific ones, we could get a specific answer to that. But I know the people's scrutiny committee, they were asking about some of those big jumps.
Yeah, they were asking about the Centrica Lodge increase, which I think was about 43-ish%.
And now, and we answered that one, and that one was because they've actually done a costing exercise to see what the service actually costs.
Yeah.
And actually the fee had to increase by that much in order to match the cost of that to the cost of providing the services.
And their placements sold with the sold.
And placements that are sold.
So that's the more generalisation comment. So there's still a concern that things haven't been reviewed annually. This was a bit dramatic increase.
I wouldn't necessarily look at 7 times and things like that. Citizenship. I think that was a set fees because they're central government things. But we'll get an answer specifically.
Yeah, the answer is that could be the answer.
It's very.
I know. It's just it's a general comment about fees and charges, and I know the water bill doesn't have to tax goes up, and it goes up.
It's one of the reasons we're doing the project. Yeah, because we might have 1,000 fees and charges, and there's 1,000 reasons why we're trying to get to clarify. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you the other thing was checking back what we've done in previous years. For instance, I think last year we talked about income generation, but how much of that's actually been achieved. So for instance, the pest control service was not going to be making a profit. So I haven't seen it in the budget about whether we've achieved our income generation.
So obviously it would have an income generation, so that was a new service set last year, wasn't it? Yeah, so there's an income generation target associated with that, and when we get to the year end, we'll understand if we've hit that target. I don't know exactly, but I think that might be a question for place and call for it.
And again, we rather drifted outside the remit.
It's a generalisation about the budget process and things about what we've done last year, because that obviously has an impact. If we haven't generated the income, then there's outstanding, or we overachieved, or
I think as a general principle,
yes,
unless it appears on one of those sheets under pressure, it's done what it said it was going to do. So, you know, because actually we've accounted for that.
That's what I would have said. If the service area had flagged up, this is not working, we need a budget investment in here because we're not making it. It would have been
notified in the paper to say there's a pressure.
So,
and it is probably in one of these appendices somewhere.
but I don't know if it was been through the point.
I think it's not.
No, because
So we assume therefore that the service areas are achieving what it wants to achieve.
I think sometimes can be a little bit.
Another question, please. Councillor Davies.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions on the consultation, if I may ask. What did we learn from last year's consultation, and has it shaped how we consultated this year? And I wanted to ask as well, in the same regard as consultation, how effective was the shorter consultation period reaching out to the residents?
Ms McCain, you going to take this one?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I haven't actually set out the consultation, so would it be helpful for me to do that and then answer the question? So
Yeah.
I don't really set out the details of the consultation. So the consultation, you're right, it was slightly shorter, councillor. So if I explain that, it started on the 13th of January, the day after Cabinet, until the 30th of January. That said, we also use pre-consultation surveys. We used to call them pre-budget surveys, but this year we have the National Residents Survey, so we also have data from the National Residents Survey. That was an online survey promoted through Bus Wi-Fi, through members, through yourselves, through PACT members, through board meetings. All of our partnerships groups, so Citizens Panel, Over 50s Forum, Young People's Forum, and so on. So all of that work was still done within that period. We obviously don't, it hasn't closed, so we don't have the final numbers, but we know that the sort of bubbling under 1,000 at the moment, which is about what we would expect in any consultation. To give, last year it closed at probably twice that, it was nearer 2,000, but they were very big chunks of responses in opposition to major proposals. So they weren't the general responses, if you know what I mean, they all count. So I think that we haven't got the final numbers in, we don't have all of the submissions in yet, we can't count that till tomorrow, but so far it looks like a productive consultation that will be helpful. I know we also talked earlier about those open questions about what else do people think we should invest in, and people have responded to that. So again, we don't have the final numbers on the doors, but it does look effective at this point.
Is there an extra question that you've put this year with regards to what the residents would like to see the money spent on? Is that a new question?
Yeah, what are your top priorities for council spending over the next year? Are there any services you think you should receive more funding? There have been similar questions in the past, but sort of different, because it was primarily about savings. So we may have asked about other priorities previously, but we wouldn't have been quite as explicit about investments because it wouldn't have been as relevant. So that's definitely been strengthened here. And the consultation, I think, is a bit cleaner in terms of feedback. Before was, I don't want to paraphrase committee, but the question was a bit complicated, a bit sort of long and complicated, and you had to fill out lots just to do one bit. Well, obviously it's much cleaner this year, we think, and much easier for people to interact with, we hope.
Thank you. I've got another couple of questions. Is it okay if I ask them, Chair?
Please.
What should the...
Sorry, Councillor Davies. Councillor Cost wants to come in on the same.
Do you mind if I just chip in on the consultation while we're on the subject?
Yeah, that's fine. That's completely fine.
Well, what I was interested in for the consultation is it follows on really from Councillor Davis. It's the effectiveness of it. I mean, what I was thinking of in particular is it mentions here the Fairness Commission, that groups like the Fairness Commission have been consulted. Well, I know for a fact that the Fairness Commission has made absolutely no comment on the budget whatsoever because it hasn't met, because I'm on it, and we've never ever discussed the budget. And I'm just wondering to what extent the local authority actually look, because I'm assuming that we look to people like the Fairness Commission because we're trying to get the opinions of people who often, whose opinions are more difficult to get, more difficult to reach, rather than, there may be usual vociferous people who will get involved in things like this. And I'm just wondering how so we actually ensure that's working, that there is a spread across the demographic and various groups in the authority that are responding.
Mr. Cornwall,
I'll start, and I'm sure Tracy will address that. So the Fairness Commission is entitled to respond to the consultation. It is a quite specific thing. So previously, actually, it was the main bit of work they did in relation to the council, because they would have all the budget proposals and they would do quite a big response back to Cabinet. Actually, at some point, the chair of the committee used to come to Cabinet and talk about that. And it was agreed with the Fairness Commission, so you can talk to Gideon as a chair. So it was agreed with them. They didn't think that was a particularly great use of their time. So actually, that's why now they've changed to do these more deep dive pieces of work into it. I think where they're focusing at the moment, Council Cox, is young people services and housing. And certainly the members of the committee and myself met with David Walton and housing last week to talk about that. So whilst they can comment on it, they actually changed their approach to doing this into a more sort of longitudinal assessment. It isn't, but they reach into those hard to hear groups or southern heard groups. We try to do that in a variety of different ways, Tracy, don't we, which I'm sure you can talk about. But we also do, there's obviously demographic information on this, so we can do an analysis of actually who we've got to as well, because obviously some groups of our population are quite difficult. Yeah.
The other thing I would add, I guess, is we did come to this committee with a lessons learned paper in, I want to say October, October. So we went through what we thought the lessons were learned from last year, which was really open, I think. Like the questionnaire was a bit complicated and at times difficult to use. And we took the comments of the committee and we fed that in. So in terms of effectiveness, that we have reflected and tried to refine that. In terms of reach, we use those different forms. The committee's had some questions before about bus Wi-Fi, for example, but we do know that reaches different demographics. So Cole, I don't like hard to reach groups because everyone can be reached if one tries, but we know we reach into those groups, and we really push through all of those different fora to make sure we get that. The consultation must be used along with other feedback that we already know and have, such as free budget surveys and the union consultation. It's part of the evidence, it's not all of the evidence. Not used in isolation. So how effective it is slightly subjective, isn't it? But it is something this committee has looked at previously and we've definitely improved. And it is comparable with other consultations we've done in terms of this.
On the Fairness Commission, if you wanted specific work done by them, you would have to pay for it.
Not necessarily. Well, no. It was the only authority in Wales with the Fairness Commission. It was originally set up as part of I think it was a Labour Party manifesto commitment in 2012. it's changed quite a bit over that period of time, but it's an independent body, and you know it's supported by officers. So Hugh Williams and Tracy's team supports it. I attend most of the time, just from an advisory point of view. I try to work with the committee about trying to change the way they do things. It's not necessarily for the council to ask it to do things. It's for it to do what it would like to do. It's got its own terms of reference and its own approach to things. And Councillor Fox, you're reasonably new to.
Well, yes, I am. I mean, I've been on it, I don't know, for a certain year now.
But it's been going for
Year
14.
But again, it's about historical reason for existing. We had an academic at Newport who was particularly interested in this type of work, but he's now moved to Swansea, so I don't know how that's affected it.
Well, Professor Gideon Calder is chair of the committee.
Okay, I think we lost the plot on that one, but
No, that's to answer the point that, you know.
So you piggyback.
Repeat what you said, happy what you said.
Yeah, you piggybacked on one of Councillor Davis's questions. Can we move back to Councillor Davis now?
Yeah, sure.
That's finished. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any areas that we're relying on reserves, and how can we reduce our dependency?
So generally, to balance the budgets, no. Are there reserve funded expenditure? Yes. And the paper that goes to the Cabinet in February and to you then the Council will set those out. But they will be very specific use of reserves which were put in place to fund those issues. So we will set those out in that paper. So yes and no. So, but I think your question comes from are we generally needing to use reserves? The answer is no, we're not.
Oh, good, I'm pleased about that.
Yes.
What?
Can I just I suppose add it? So I think it's really important. So as part of that £4.9 million worth of service pressures that we're managing, what you'll find is some of that reserve commitment that's in the budget is to transform some of those services so they're actually able to deliver within the budget. And I think that's really, really important. And you know that we're not just using reserve just to plug a hole.
Yeah.
And just saving the problem for a later day. So you know that is something we need to monitor over the next 12 months to make sure that actually those service changes have happened.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really.
Sorry, perhaps Mr. Rushworth explain his role in making sure that they are balanced budgets, and you've got a legal duty to do the same.
Yeah, so for the Council, all the Cabinet's budget proposals and any alternatives will need an assessment that A, it was a balanced budget, and B, that the level of the Council's reserves are robust, and that the budget is deliverable as far as I'm able to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Just one last question. What should the committee watch for to spot budget pressures in the future?
So obviously this new approach has just over nearly £5 million worth of budget pressures that services are managing. They're not being funded for those. They will be monitored through the ongoing monitoring of the revenue budget. So we will be putting in some specific monitoring for that. And then generally also in the monitoring reports, any other budget pressures coming from demand for services or any other reason will also be flagged up in there. So it's the in-year budget monitoring, but I would probably say that we will specifically monitor the delivery of those mitigations for those unfunded budget pressures.
Thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
But from council's point of view, as if you like lay people to this process, if we see a horrendous pay rise in the papers, that would be a flag to say to you something's happening, you know, and that's a pressure.
Yeah, we will be flagging up those
Yeah,
sorts of things. Yeah.
But just as lay people, we can see that as well as anybody else. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else?
Can I
Please.
ask a question, please, Chair? On looking at the areas that are significantly at risk of exceeding the budget allocation, obviously they've indicated mitigations that are likely to be put into operation to the budget that appears to be obviously exceeding what's been allocated. But yeah, the one on highways, for example, says the mitigation is to realign the budget, which certainly to somebody like myself, a councillor coming out here and trying to get a sense of, you know, how the budget's going to work and what impact various decisions can have. I mean, you know, with respect, it just seems a bit broad and a bit vague. I mean, what is that going to mean for council services?
Yeah. So in the number of services, not just highways and infrastructure, you will have certain budgets where there's requirements to invest in them for different reasons. But actually, in the same service areas, there are other budgets that are continue to underspend. And therefore, the suggestion is that we via the budgets from those areas to the other area. Those variance rules are already a part of the council's financial regulations anyway. So, you know, this, as I said to you, this needs to start becoming embedded in our thinking, so that managers and heads of service manage their budgets in this way in going forward. But you'll probably find in most services you've got pockets of overspending, but you've also got pockets of kind of underspending. You can actually just move the budget around to sort of.
So are we confident, for example, in highways, that those two things will balance themselves out? So the surplus money will cover any overspend, therefore there's going to be no impact on services. That sounds.
I think that to me is probably the easier and the easier one to guarantee. Yes.
So what? So there won't be any impact on services whatsoever.
No, if
that works, yes, we're very confident it will work.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the key is to ensure that you're arriving the budgets from an area of your confidence that you don't need it. Yes, and as long as that is the case, it's pretty much a dead cert, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, are we confident that's always going to be the case, or maybe we're looking down the line at cutbacks in services?
As long as you're taking the money from the area where you're confident that you're making underspending, yes. Yeah, you are.
Mr. Cole.
It's a really good question, and I would say that my has been really clear with the other two scrutiny committees looking at placing corporate vehicle. The department their role is going to be scrutinising those elements as well. I think, you know, that it's within the delegated authority heads of service, they can hire those budgets. So that's what's happening. That's a thing we do. I think why Myron is saying that's probably the easiest thing. We do that every year anyway. When we're looking at budgets and we're actually trying to move money around, those are the sorts of things we would do. I think ultimately what you've got now in the budget for infrastructure next year is a budget that had some money in it, that will have less money in it, and a budget that needed more money in it, will have more money in it. So you do that, and then we monitor it. So they're monitored by head service budget managers every month, but they've been monitored with final support of a quarter. But being
it's 4 times a year that we report.
So basically that will be reported, so we'll know very quickly if that's working.
The only thing you've got to guard against as councillors is how much political control you give into officers to buy up budgets.
I think that it's a council decision, and most of those things matter. The things that are more problematic, not problematic, more the risk, are the things that require some transformation fund in there, and transformation services in order to change the way that service is delivered to make it more efficient. Right? And those are the I would suggest those are the things to look at. Yes.
Councillor Evans still on this point.
Yeah, well, following on from this point, is how can we ensure that the public are getting value for money from services? And I think highways is a classic example at the moment where I would question we're getting value for money. If I can look at a report's pothole, Tottenham at the moment, and I see them going to fill up this bit of pothole, and 2 weeks later they're going back because they haven't done the final bit of it, so they're going back to do the bit which they didn't do. I would be questioning value for money. So how can we ensure that the public are getting value for money in services? Because I know some of our services are not efficient, and they need to be more effective. So
we asked this.
I'll jump in here because there are specific things. I think if there are specific things like that the committee would like to sort of look at, and that, for instance, should be referred to place of court for a report on that work. I think the part of the response for that is even though we've had and it's really important to say this, even though we've had relatively good settlement, that is only to meet the demands of population growth. The two big things that drive that are population growth and school population. So those are the two. So basically, it's just to drive that. It isn't to do anything else. And if you look at the data that's in the Highways Asset Management Plan, highways infrastructure is woefully underfunded. It can't be efficient because they're just and Tracy would say very similar things about the assets as well. It is all reactive, therefore it is not efficient. And yes, without a huge injection, you simply can't get ahead. But if there's specific,
the question of doing 90% of that pothole and not doing the other bit, and then going back 2 years later to do the final bit, that's not efficient use of resources.
It may appear not, but I know just from talking to the head of infrastructure that sometimes there are very, very good reasons why that happens as well, from a health safety. But I think if there were specific questions, well, they should be referred to.
It's a general ensuring accountability of value for money.
Right. I think we're coming back to Councillor Cox with another question. Yeah.
Well, on something different, I'm just interested in the figures given for school budgets. 8.5 million for schools, but obviously that's not all schools don't see all of that, presumably. So I suppose the point I'm getting to is what's the likely uplift going to be for individual school budgets? We're in a position to know.
It'll be in the ISP, the individual school budgets, but they'll all have all their pressures met.
So we have then our own distribution mechanism for distributing the schools, sort of like ISP.
But it depends how much you put in the pot to be distributed.
Yeah, correct. So the figure that we said is what's going into the pot as additional monies. We've calculated that's based on pay rises, other contractual increases, and new and growing schools, because we have a number of those growing schools. I'm not sure if we have any new ones opening next year, but yeah. So we've got the growing schools, and we make sure that we put money in for those so that the per pupil funding is at least maintained as those numbers grow. So school pressures are all funded. Obviously, then the formula then kicks in, and then that's shows the expert here, but that formula will then drive that funding into the appropriate schools based on pupil numbers, etc.
There's lots of different things. So we look at the condition of the school, the size of the school, the comfort of the teachers, the comfort of the pupils, lots of eligible for school meals, lots and lots of things feed into the funding formula. So everybody's allocation will be different because that school is different. It will be every child will have the same AWP, which is the age group of pupil units.
But so the completion, my question was, is that the whole of the 8.5 million is going in that big pot to be distributed? It's not being used for central services?
No, central education's got its own increase, the schools.
Thank you, Ms. Gregg. But all schools have had their indicative budgets by this time of year.
So they go up at the end of February. The schools filed some weeks to confirm the totalised concern about the 14th of February. They have until the end of March actually to give the final budgets, but they always try and give them indicative allocation towards the end of February so schools can start planning. They don't have to submit their final budgets to us then until the 31st of May, so government works up until the 31st of May to write their budget.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Russell, cut across you then.
No, it's the same as the council's funding from Welsh governments. So Welsh governments puts money into it's a big pot, and then the formula comes in and distributes it. It's very similar.
Okay. Did you have another question?
No.
Well, can I draw you back to, the process? We've been asked to look at how we contend with the process for this current year. Any comments on that?
I'm happy with the process. I think the difficulty this year is, as you say, there having been apart from council tax, which is obviously a big concern for some residents. There's very little in there to angle the public to a degree, because we're not closing down a care home or recommending anything controversial.
Yeah.
And I guess that's.
Is there any contrary view to that?
I'm not quite sure if this is absolutely within the role of the committee, but it's quite nice to be a councillor and sit down and go through a budget that isn't hacking back services. I think it's extremely refreshing. It's certainly in my period on the council, and I've never experienced, the general trend in recent years. Obviously, as we put back, it's really pleasant to not do that.
I don't know whether that's a comment that we could put in.
I know, I might have said that. I'm not sure else I could make it.
Well, do we want to make any comments on the budget process? No.
Right, as I said, I'm happy with the budget process. I think members have been well informed, and I guess I put the process and survey on the Altering Matters Facebook page, which has got about 6,500 people, and nobody bit my ear or I don't know if they filled it out or not, but
and then the third thing that we need to look at is what our sister committees have recommended. That's on page 7, item 3.2. When Councillor Howells was with us, we did have a little look at that. The only one there, the insurance premium. You can tend to with that.
we just don't know their recommendations, don't we?
Yeah, so we're happy that with the other recommendations from the other.
I don't think we can be happy or sad about them. I think we just
content.
We have to note their recommendations.
Okay.
If it'd be helpful, Jay, do you want me to run through what I've noted as we were going?
Yes, please.
So I've got the action regarding the actual inflation figure for council post budgeting that you were about to adjourn. I've noted that obviously we acknowledge the comments of the committees. Councillor Cox, I think I've captured what you were trying to say in the comment, which is sort of welcoming the change in focus in the budget setting process. Well, the focus on being on funding things rather than finding savings. Is that generally is that okay?
That will do.
And then obviously that we're content with the report to go forward to cabinet. Anything to add? Anything to amend?
No. Well, that finishes this part of the meeting. Can we now go on to the scrutiny officer's report? Do you all need to stay for this? It's scrutiny officer's report.
They can run away if they want to.
Thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Thank you all.
Tracy, I can't see your email.
Really?
Yeah.
I've just forwarded it to Janice to say the matter's closed. I'll resend it to you now.
Okay.
I know, okay.
It's all right, Chair. I'll just make a start with the actions. According to order. We've touched on it briefly in the minutes section anyway, but there are a couple that are ongoing and outstanding. I have escalated the outstanding actions and outcomes, so hopefully we'll get a response to them soon. In terms of the forward work programme, our next meeting is the 12th of March. Bear with me. It's the 12th of March, my screen went up. And yeah, we've got an item in the pipeline for that. I'll be able to give more of an update maybe next week, maybe. But yeah, I would recommend that we don't cancel that one just because I think there will be an item added there. And then yeah, as you say, if there are outstanding actions, I don't think there are. They will be chased, but that's all from me, Chair. We covered most of it in the section of the minutes.
The meeting of the 12th of March, will it be a single item agenda?
Yes, yeah.
Can I suggest, Chair, I'm not sure whether the meeting on the 30th of April will go ahead due to further.
I will double check with Leanne about that one, just so we're really clear, and I'll get you an update.
And if not, can I suggest that the anti-poverty strategic plan update is brought forward?
Yeah.
We can get an update of that.
Yes.
Leave that with me. I will double check with Leanne if that falls within pre-election period, and if it does, we'll bring it forward.
Yeah, it's a long way to ask officers and bring a report forward. It's nearly 2 months.
No, I don't think. I think it's you're giving them plenty of notice.
Yeah.
You're asking for an update. An update is 4 weeks earlier than it would have been. And they've got, we're already in January now, February, March. They've got 2 months to give us an update, and I wouldn't have thought it's that unreasonable to
Okay, if it's all possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's
Leave it with me.
possible. If it's not, perhaps they could attend and explain why they can't give us an update.
That's fine. Leave it with me. I'll pick it up with the strategic director and I'll get your response.
Thank you. And while we're on that, I noticed.
Sorry, let's just clarify that.
Yeah.
If it's not incurred, we're happy to stick with the original date, yeah?
Yeah, it is impaired, but whether
we can or can't hear it.
Yeah.
And if we can't hear it, we'll ask for it to be brought forward.
I would suggest that the committee are happy with that, are they?
Yeah, well, we've got to meet anyway, so.
Yeah, no problem.
And just on the forward work programme, I noticed we've had the meetings again, and we've done the same thing where we've got no meeting 1 month and 2 on the same month. Perhaps that could be looked into.
What was I in reference to, sorry?
The forward work programme overview, scrutiny management committees
26/7?
for this year, yeah.
Yeah.
This year and next year. I think we got 2 in June or something like that, and none in the month before or after, so.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tricky because there are some items that we hear that need to come by a certain date. I've tried to space them out a bit better than next year, but I can certainly, we're still very much in the draft stage of it, so I can go back and have a little, that's no problem.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's all for me, promise.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Can we go offline, please?
There we go.